Okay, let's talk about the massive, and I mean massive, disconnect happening right now in the world of generative AI. You see, companies are pouring billions, with a B, into this technology, but almost none of it seems to be paying off. So today we're going to deconstruct the hype and figure out what is really going on.
And let's just dive right in with the one number that pretty much tells the whole story. 95%. Yeah. According to a landmark study from MIT, that is the percentage of enterprise Gen AI pilots that are currently failing.
And that really brings us to the central question of this whole explainer, doesn't it? With literally tens of billions of dollars invested, why are nearly all corporate AI projects just stalling out? They're producing little to no measurable impact. So what on earth is going so wrong?
To start, let's look at the official story, what the researchers over at MIT actually uncovered. They argue that the problem isn't that the technology itself is broken. No, it's that companies are actively running away from the one thing that makes it valuable in the first place.
They've got this great name for it, Gen AI friction. And the big idea here is that all that resistance, the uncomfortable, messy work of redesigning workflows, retraining your staff, and digging deep into your existing systems, that's not a bug. It's actually the main feature. That friction is what forces a company to learn and to adapt, and that is where the real value gets created.
This slide right here just perfectly illustrates what MIT calls the Gen AI divide. On one side, you've got the failing 95%. They're all about high adoption, getting lots of people to log into a generic tool that looks amazing in a demo but just falls apart with real-world complexity. So they get a ton of logins, but nothing actually changes. On the other side, you have the successful 5%. They embrace that friction. They build for what the researchers call high absorption, which means they're embedding AI deep into important workflows and building systems that can actually learn over time. That, right there, is where the ROI lives.
But, that's the academic view from 30,000 feet. What does it actually feel like for the people on the ground, the ones being told to use these tools every single day? Is this whole thing just about avoiding friction, or is there something more fundamental going on with the tech itself?
This quote from a developer, man, it just perfectly captures the feeling from the trenches. The promise of AI was this incredible 10-fold productivity boost, a 10xer. But the reality for so many people is just a tiny marginal improvement, maybe 10% at best, a 1.1xer.
And get this, it can actually get even worse. The really crucial point here is that some of these tools are what they call 0.5xers, meaning it takes you more time to go back and fix all the AI's mistakes than it would have taken to just do the work yourself from scratch. These tools can also create a whole new kind of technical debt. Just think of it like building a house on a really shaky foundation. Sure, a developer can see that the AI's code works right now, but since they don't really understand how it works, trying to change or fix it later becomes a total nightmare. It all just points to this massive gap between the hype and the reality on the ground. So, okay, we're seeing these project failures at the company level, but what happens if this starts to build into something much, much bigger? What if this 95% failure rate isn't just about a few bad strategies, but a symptom of a massive market-wide delusion?
And that's what we're seeing. Right now, you have seasoned financial analysts looking at the trillions of dollars in AI valuations on one hand and the total lack of real-world profit on the other, and they are starting to use a very specific and very scary word, bubble. To really wrap your head around the scale of this problem, just look at this comparison from an analyst named Julian Garan. He calculated the relative size of major financial bubbles. So if we set the dot-com bubble at a value of 1, the 2008 housing crisis that basically crippled the entire global economy was a 4.25. Well, according to his analysis, the AI bubble is already a 17. That's 4 times larger than 2008. It's just wild.
Now, the academic world, of course, has a fancy term for this. They call it valuation misalignment risk. But really, all that means is that the market has become completely unhinged from reality. The price tag is based on a good story about the future, not on the value that's being delivered today. And that huge gap, well, that's where bubbles live.
So, if the tech isn't actually profitable for 95% of the companies using it, what in the world is propping up these astronomical valuations? Well, it looks like it might be a little bit of financial engineering that became, shall we say, infamous back during the dot-com bust.
It's a practice called circular financing. And I promise you, once you see how it works, you will not be able to unsee it.
All right, let's walk through a perfect example of how this thing works. First, you have the investment. NVIDIA invests $100 billion in OpenAI, but here's the catch. It's not cash. It's just credits to use their own chips. Second, the valuation soars. That massive number inflates OpenAI's valuation, which helps it attract real cash from other investors to cover its staggering losses. Third, the purchase. OpenAI then turns right around and uses those credits to buy the chips from NVIDIA. And finally, the revenue spike. That purchase gets booked as revenue for NVIDIA, which, you guessed it, sends its stock price to the moon.
So think about that. It's a perfect loop. No actual cash has changed hands. No new, tangible value has been created for the world. But on paper, both companies are magically worth more, and the bubble just inflates even further. So, given this completely jarring disconnect between all the hype and the on-the-ground reality, how does any sane business leader even begin to navigate this environment? Is it even possible to succeed?
Well, the MIT report actually gives us a really clear map based on what that successful 5% does differently. Okay, first finding. The data shows that internal AI projects fail twice as often as projects built with external partners who have that real-world experience. Second, while most companies are throwing money at flashy sales and marketing AI, that's mostly a trap. The real returns are found in the less glamorous back-office automation. And finally, instead of trying to ban the shadow AI that your employees are already using on their own, the smart companies formalize it and support it.
And that brings us to the playbook for how you can actually be in that 5%. The key takeaways are right here. You have to measure absorption, which is how many workflows you've actually redesigned, not adoption, which is just how many people logged in. You have to fund the memory layer. I mean, if your tool can't retain context and learn from past interactions, it's just a toy. It can't scale. Redesign your contracts so you're paying vendors for hitting learning milestones, not just for the tech itself. And maybe most importantly, you have to treat friction as a signal. If your pilot project feels way too easy and smooth, that's a huge warning sign that it's probably too shallow to ever create real value.
So, the good news is there is a playbook for success on an individual company level. But this leaves us with one final, pretty unsettling question. Even if you follow that playbook perfectly, what does it matter if you're building on ground that might not even be there tomorrow?